Welcome everyone to the Lifestyle, Environment, Heritage and Resilience Committee. Whenever we gather, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners, the Aboriginal people of these lands and waters, and we acknowledge all their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions, as well as Torres Strait Islander and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to our community. Attendance, we have everyone except for Bob right now. Councillor Castro is not with us. And I don't have an apology from him, so we'll just move on to the confirmation of the... Actually, there's no leaves of absence, as I understand. And we'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes. Does anyone want to move the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Thank you, Councillor Martin. It's moved by Councillor Marshall, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Excellent. We have the forward planning schedule, which is starred. Did anyone have any questions about that? No? Do you want to move the... Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Moved by Councillor Marshall, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. The forward planning schedule is just all those in favour. Motion is carried. Let's go to our first presentation. The two presentations today are being driven or overseen by Mark Ryan, who many of you know, and he's got presenters who will help us. I think we've got Troy up first, and this is a presentation relating to exercise Leviathan.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Today I'll be providing you with an overview of exercise Leviathan, the city's pre-season exercise for the 2025-26 high-risk weather season. In recent years, we've had significant operational exposure to the city's high-frequency hazards such as flood, bushfire, and more recently cyclone. In contrast, a tsunami represents an extremely low frequency and rare event in our context. However, its rapid onset, inherent complexity, and significant cross-agency coordination requirements make it an ideal scenario to deliberately stretch our thinking, challenge our assumptions, and test our systems beyond familiar risk profiles. Conducted over 3 days, exercise Leviathan explored a far-field undersea earthquake in the Terminic Tonga region, generating a tsunami threat for the Gold Coast, based on models of a 2,500-year average recurrence interval event. The exercise examined effectiveness of the city's local disaster management arrangements within a complex operational environment, including application of our roles and responsibilities under the Queensland Disaster Management Arrangements, and provided assurance that we're meeting our obligations under the Disaster Management Act 2003. Bringing together more than 150 participants from across the city's disaster management ecosystem, the exercise ensured that we're not only prepared for the hazards we experience regularly, but also resilient and adaptable in the face of rare atypical events. Tsunamis are waves caused by sudden movements of the ocean surface, within the city of Gold Coast having identified as the highest risk of tsunami impact across the Queensland coast in the 2023 Queensland State Disaster Risk Report. This is due to our narrow continental shelf, lack of protective reefs and islands, and high coastal population density. The 2023 tsunami modelling along the East Queensland Coast report helps us understand what could happen on the Gold Coast under different scenarios. This modelling details 5 seismic origin locations, which are up on the screen now, in our region that could result in a tsunami impacting the Gold Coast. The source of the tsunami generating event dictates the estimated arrival time of the first wave and therefore how much warning time is available. Of the 5 modelled scenarios, they typically occur in our regional section that you'll see up on the screen now, affording us about 4 to 5.5 hours warning time. Tsunamis comprise of a series of very long wavelengths, hundreds of kilometres, generally lasting between 5 minutes and 2 hours and occur in groups. The first wave, however, may not be the largest, and the tsunami may still be evident 24 to 48 hours after the first wave. Tsunamis can move as fast as a commercial jet plane, retaining their energy as they travel across the ocean. Of the 4 tsunami generating mechanisms, 3 have previously produced detectable tsunami waves on the Gold Coast coastline, with the most recent being in January 22 following the eruption of the undersea volcano near Tonga. Historically, though, these impacts of the Gold Coast have been minimal, typically recorded as sea oscillations rather than damaging inundation.
Our community's understanding of what disaster management looks like is fairly limited until a disaster hits. So it's important that when it does occur, that the community can have confidence that we've got not just great buildings, but great people.
We've had state involvement, local involvement, our emergency services, our utilities, lots of planning meetings, lots of understanding what's going on, really just to bring it all together and get everyone in here today.
We're going to need a really rapid onset decision-making process if something like this happens. And yeah, if people have got a bit of muscle memory that we can pull on, then that helps us as well, having our workforce ready. These exercises are really pivotal to try and make sure that we've got those relationships in place before we have to do it for real.
So it's really important that we have an opportunity to practice it in a safe environment where we get to learn, we understand what those gaps are, we understand, we strengthen our relationships, we test our systems, and ultimately we better prepare for helping the community if something like this was to happen.
To actually practice the tsunami, we're obviously practicing a fairly high-end disaster event, which hopefully is unlikely, but would have significant consequences. I think it builds in that resilience into the capability because we're looking at a really most dangerous level event, which then enables us to scale down some of those processes for other events that might not be so impactful.
It's a great opportunity for us to really integrate our services, our teams, and make sure that we seamlessly work together.
So it's understanding what their expectations are of our agency and how we can best prepare our agency to support them in achieving their outcomes.
These exercises are so important. They keep us sharp, they keep us in the best position possible to make sure that when it's go time, we know exactly what's happening and when it needs to occur. We can have the best buildings in the world, the best equipment in the world. It's all about the people that are behind it making those decisions. And we'll continue to do more exercises like this over coming years to refine the plan around tsunami to make sure that if in the very low chance it ever did occur, that we've got a plan that we can immediately put into place to protect Gold Coasters.
So that was just a little snapshot that was taken on day one of the exercise and showcases the number of partners, not from just within inside the city, but right across the disaster management spectrum on the Gold Coast. So as mentioned, the scenario was modelled on the equivalent of a 2,500 year average recurrence interval event. The exercise was conducted in real time across the first 2 days, with day one progressing in a staged manner from an initial tsunami watch before escalating to a land inundation warning throughout the morning, with the first wave impacts occurring shortly after 2:30, 5 hours after the initial warning was received. Day two focused on the immediate operational environment in the 24 hours following the impact, with day three then conducting and focusing on the recovery phase 14 days after the initial impact. The name, Exercise Leviathan, was chosen to reflect the immense ocean-borne power of a tsunami event. The title signals that this activity was more than just a routine drill. It was an exploration of our collective capability to face colossal, fast-moving threat and to coordinate a response that is truly Leviathan scale. The exercise aimed to practice and evaluate the city's response and early recovery arrangements for a tsunami in accordance with the local disaster management plan and to validate key assumptions within the draft tsunami subplan. The objectives listed on the screen were further then supported by subgroups tailored to the specific responsibilities of each participating function. The evaluation of Exercise Leviathan was conducted in partnership with key agencies and neighbouring local governments, including Queensland Reconstruction Authority, Ipswich City Council, Scenic Rim Regional Council, Logan City, Brisbane City and Sunshine Coast Council. Throughout the 3 days of exercising, 379 observations were captured that informed 43 recommendations, with a summary of those recommendations up on the screen in front of you now. Once these recommendations have been presented to the local disaster management group and they are accepted, they'll be transitioned into the Disaster and Emergency Management Unit lessons management process to support implementation, tracking and continuous improvement. In relation to next steps, the exercise afforded us an opportunity to explore enhancements and refinements to the local disaster management group subplan for tsunami. Since the exercise, this subplan has been updated and was endorsed at the final meeting of 2025, with a further review scheduled upon review of the evacuation zones once that is finalised, ensuring that our plan continues to evolve and be based on evidence and operational learning. As mentioned, the evacuation zones are currently under review, and we've engaged specialist support to help the city with that process. This work will directly inform evacuation decision-making following a land inundation threat and support further community education of the Gold Coast. Finally, throughout 2025 and 2026 financial year, the city has delivered 16 exercises spanning multiple hazards and formats, reinforcing our capability across a broad risk profile. Since Exercise Leviathan, Exercise Modus has also been facilitated by the Disaster Emergency Management Unit, with participation from neighbouring South East Queensland councils and our counterparts across the border in Tweed. The purpose of this exercise was to example regional evacuation capability and capacity and coordination arrangements for an event of this scale. A further 9 exercises are scheduled this financial year, with planning underway for our next pre-season major exercise, demonstrating our sustained commitment to preparedness, learning and continual improvement. Thank you.
It's awesome. Thanks heaps, Troy. I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask about. First was, how could you characterise or explain how the relationship between our local government and other surrounding local governments work when we engage in these exercises?
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly a very mature relationship and very supportive of one another. A great example of not only the support, for example, Brisbane City provided to our exercise Leviathan, that was replicated some weeks later with an invitation from us to go up and participate and evaluate their local disaster coordination exercise for their high risk weather season as well. So part of the reason why we do that and invite other councils, one, they have the experience and exposure and training at equivalent to what we do, but it provides us with a fantastic opportunity to get real insights into what we are actually doing and if it is working and if it isn't working, as opposed to, I guess, self-rating ourselves.
Yeah, I think I was trying to get at is more even understanding the collaboration when it comes to facilities. In a tsunami event or a large-scale event that might need lots of evacuations, we potentially might need reliance on community facilities in outside other local governments. So maybe if you could just touch on that for me.
Thanks, Chair. In relation to that, one of the biggest things that we learnt, for example, when we went and did the Tweed exercise, is so the city, Queensland's a locally led response capability, so it's the City of Gold Coast, and then we bring in partners such as Red Cross or other functions of the city. There was some 3 state government departments plus Tweed Shire Council that have to stand up to get a New South Wales evacuation centre. So we actually then started to understand around the differences in the structures. So we're able to, if people from Coolangatta want to go to Tweed or Tweed want to come to Coolangatta, there's actually a simple way, and we teased that out during the exercise. But the one that, as Troy spoke to, where we did the ones with our surrounding local government areas, what we discovered was everyone's following the same system. It would be very easy, for example, for us, as we explored in the exercise, to lift and shift a Gold Coast team into a Logan evacuation centre and actually run it out of another local government, just purely because we've had those interoperabilities between the councils. But similarly, they would say, if we're not going to be impacted, we would throw staff at and do that. So hopefully, regardless of border, people would have a very similar experience in an evacuation centre if we had to make that call.
That's great. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess it's following on from your line of questioning. I guess my question was in relation to evacuation zones, and I know that this is it's being reviewed and it's ongoing. I didn't know if there's a separate body of work perhaps that'll come back to the committee at some stage in the future, but I'm hoping you can shed some light on it, just in relation to all types of natural disasters that could occur. And I think it follows on from what the Chair was saying, in that sense of just getting a really good idea of, okay, we know what our natural disasters could be. As it currently sits, this is what we could do as operational wise to go to evacuation centres. Additionally, this is what we're considering, and some of that commentary you've just made about even other LGAs and other close by ones, it's fantastic to hear. And, I know that there is a lot of capacity, especially within some of the community networks on the Gold Coast. But again, just getting a little bit more insight as to where that's at with conversation, I'd certainly welcome. And like I said, I guess the question is there going to be something brought forward as part of perhaps some other report in the near future, or otherwise, would that be something that could be welcomed?
Through you, Chair, if that's something that the committee would like to see, more than happy to bring that forward. The other thing that we explored during this exercise was around that full evacuation is not the answer. We would put more people in harm's way. So what we were able to determine during the exercise was things like, what is the floor height of tall buildings that people would be better to shelter in place, and they would be much safer to shelter in place than trying to evacuate. Queensland Police looked at an ability to declare the entire coastline and being able to effectively issue building owners to open the doors and get people up high, and that would then reduce things like traffic. We've got all the traffic modelling around what it looks and it doesn't look pretty if we were to do an evacuation, but more than happy if the committee to bring that back through you, Chair.
Is there a report that is pending in our kind of forward schedule, or a standard report that could include, rather than bringing an entire report in and of its own right, like something that could be bolted on where we could talk about evacuation as an element of a future report planned? I'm just trying to think which.
Yeah, through you, Chair, not at this stage, but the amount of work that we're doing, including some validation with an external contractor around that, I think it would be appropriate to bring it we can bring that as a separate and bring it in an all hazards approach.
Okay, so we might.
That's the preference of.
We might workshop some words that, if you're comfortable moving the item. I had another question that related to the further exercises. There's 9 further exercises scheduled up until the end of the financial year, which means did that mean between now and June 30? There's 9 more exercises.
Yes, through you, Chair, that's correct.
And could you characterise those for me? Like, help me understand what the different types of exercises they might be.
Absolutely. Through you, Chair. So a really good example is we do scenario-based drills with our local disaster coordination centre workforce. So they're 90-minute drills that we vary across different hazards or topical issues within our industry space at present, conducted in a Teams environment, so they're not overly onerous in terms of people's time and the commitment to their BAU workload, but ensuring that we're keeping that workforce in tune and on song with what they may need to do should we call upon them essentially at any given moment. So we run 6 of those across all of our on-call teams. The next probably major one that is coming up is actually an evacuation centre management exercise. So we've gone through a review process following Tropical Cyclone Alfred, where we do have a current evacuation centre management exercise, but that event highlighted to us there is some refinements that we can make to that exercise to better prepare the city personnel that we have work in those facilities ahead of the next disaster event.
And might I ask as well, if there is actually an event that occurs and we have to mobilise, that I'm assuming that changes the schedule. So that practice, that real-time example, ends up being a practice, and that changes the schedule for exercises. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, through you, Chair, 100%. And a great example of that would be Tropical Cyclone Alfred from March last year. We typically aim to start or really ramp up our training both in a theoretical sense and also a practical sense around that late February, early March period. So with that event and obviously the exposure and the level of effort that went in across so many different arms of the city, it was absolutely most palatable and acceptable that we deferred that program and we shifted it to a later schedule in the year.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Any other questions? Councillor Martin.
Just a question on the tsunami example you gave. Was that location that's a likely location, or that's the most impactful? Just interested in why you chose that location.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So the Kermadec Tonga seismic event displayed the example of what would be probably the most inundation for the Gold Coast if a land inundation warning was issued. So we wanted to try and, again, really lean into our stretch thinking and pushing our boundaries around what could be possible. Given, though, that it was at the 2,500 year average recurrence interval, it does highlight how rare an event of that scale could be. But exercising at a 100 average recurrence interval and even a 500 year average recurrence interval wouldn't push our boundaries far enough to make an exercise like this worthwhile.
Okay, thank you. And other question I had was, as part of our 9 other sort of scenario testings, are we looking at sort of terrorism and sort of that sort of acts of violence and that sort of scenario? Obviously, we've got something recent in the news today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. And through you, Chair, what we've actually doing in that site, so we've got a good relationship, very close between us, the City Inspectorate, QPS, that triangle, which works across the city. And what we've been doing as well is for the core disaster management team is rolling out just-in-time exercises. So what we'll do is pick a topical issue that's happening somewhere in the world, and in this case, we actually did it on the Westfield Bondi incident. What would it look like at PAC Fair? And then start unpacking our response responsibilities. We did one a week and a half ago as the cyclones were picking up north around what would be our role as part of a evacuation of Norfolk Island, because that we actually got put on standby, I think it was 2 years ago as that cyclone moved towards there. So absolutely, we are looking at it. We have a really clear understanding that our role is around the consequence management and police being the response, but absolutely, it's something that we exercise, and I understand the QPS district are doing one in April, of which we're been invited at the district level to participate as well.
Could I follow up on that? Great to hear, and I think that's really interesting around real life examples in other parts of the world. Just in terms of the city's responsibility on consequence management, but I'm also aware we've obviously got a safety camera network. So do you, we could also potentially be first eyes on the ground, and how that goes back to QPS. Is that part of the sort of what you model?
Yeah, absolutely. Through you, Chair, we have the SCN as a direct fibre link out to the LDCC. We have an arrangement where if we require an operator as part of bigger coordination, they send a third operator from their SCN control room across and then recall another. So from a coordination point of view, absolutely. And interestingly, when we did another CT exercise, what we looked at is that the potential that the centre may need to be occupied by another agency, and where would we stand up our backup LDCC if we were actually asked to leave the centre if there was an agency that had a higher need to use it. So all of those layers most definitely are all connected.
Great. I'm very reassured. Thank you.
Good. I think Councillor Wilkinson's close. I think the Executive General Manager prepared some words at the same time as you were preparing words. So if you want to workshop what he's prepared with your own. It's like a Wilkinson-Brogan hybrid. Did anyone have any other questions while we're waiting? No? All right, so we've got a motion prepared by Mr. Brogan and Councillor Wilkinson. And it proposes that a report be back to this committee by June 2026, addressing evacuation planning for these natural disaster scenarios. And it's natural disaster scenarios and future disaster events, and instead of, including interoperability of disaster centres. And I think the context around that is cross-government, intergovernment. That's the context of that word, like that, how we would work with other local governments. Did anyone want to second that motion? No? Councillor Marshall? Great. Seconded by Councillor Marshall. It's moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Marshall. Councillor Wilkinson, did you want to speak to the motion?
Chair, I'd be happy to, but unless you, I'm happy to succeed to yourself if you wanted to give some commentary. If you,
it's your motion.
Yeah,
you have to open debate. Tell us what you think.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity, and I appreciate the consideration of the committee to add just the additional piece in. I think, first of all, appreciate officers' presentation today. I think Operation or Exercise Leviathan is quite fascinating. I think the fact that we do these types of exercises across the city is just a testimony to the resilience of what we are trying to build within the city of Gold Coast. You know, the fact that we've still got 9 more operational kind of exercises to occur before the end of this financial year shows that we are planning for the future and what could come as far as natural disasters. You know, we certainly plan for the best, and I think our team does a phenomenal job in actually executing different scenarios in that respect. So, we plan for the worst, hope for the best, I think is what I would best surmise it as, and I think our team does an excellent job at planning for the worst, and hopefully we don't end up having that eventuate, but if it were to, we are very much prepared as a city to take it on, and I always take the community on that journey with us because we'll need their help when that time comes as well, and preparing them is part of it, but also informing them and keeping them updated on our progression on this I think is important too. And I think Mr. Ryan, you could probably comment on this. Was there over 100 activities last year that the disaster management group popped up to across the city? I think that in itself would be around that figure.
Yeah, I think it's in excess of that figure, Councillor. Yeah.
I thought so. And that, I think, again, just gives further weight to the fact that we are preparing this city for all events, and we are out there talking to the community, and I think we're only going to go from strength to strength. So I certainly endorse this recommendation. I look forward to a potential report coming back on what our other evacuation planning looks like on different scenarios, and I hope the committee endorses it today.
Yeah. Did anyone want to speak against the motion? Would anyone like to make a other positive contribution? No? I'll take the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. I'll let your open be your close, Councillor Wilkinson. I hope that's okay. It was a good open. Troy, thank you for coming. Cheers. Next up, we have, I think, Sue. Great to have you with us, Sue. Sue's first time presenting. And she has a presentation on Program AIR. Sorry, did you have a question, Councillor Martin, about AIR in general? Yes. Well, this is all of the body of work together, I believe. You're up. You just have to press the button. There you are. When the light's on, you'll be speaking.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the progress of Program AIR, Advocacy, Information and Resilience. We last provided an update on the 7th of August at Committee 858. And as a refresher, the purpose of Program AIR is to prepare for the impacts of severe wind and tropical cyclone events. There are 7 projects in the program under the themes of advocacy, information and resilience, with the city-owned critical infrastructure project having 5 separate work packages. I will now provide a progress update for each of them, followed by a summary of the next steps. So the first project is severe wind advocacy. Technically, this project is on hold and scheduled to ramp up next financial year. However, stakeholder engagement is ongoing throughout the program and all projects, and we are continuing to increase our stakeholder network with both internal and external stakeholders. We're partnering with stakeholders to advocate for increased building and infrastructure wind resilience across South East Queensland. We've been supporting city plan updates with improved wind hazard data and technical input. We're also promoting cost-effective resilience actions for households and engaging all tiers of government to align priorities and progress shared outcomes. The next project is the Severe Wind Household Resilience Program. Phase 1 saw 40 on-site assessments undertaken in November by expert assessors, which were a range of homes of different types, ages and subject to different hazards across the Gold Coast. Homes were assessed for 4 hazards: bushfire, flood, storm and cyclone. And the resilience rating reports are currently being reviewed by the Resilient Building Council's technical working group to confirm that the resilience ratings match expectations of the expert assessors. The resilience reports are due to be issued to homeowners by the end of this month. Community workshops are now being developed to discuss how to implement recommendations in the report with the 40 participants, and will provide both in-person and online workshops. Phase 2 planning has also commenced, which is a pilot of the multi-hazard self-assessment app currently in development by the Resilient Building Council. Community workshops are also being developed to engage Phase 2 participants and will include case studies from the Phase 1. We've also commenced planning of government and industry workshops to build support amongst leaders and decision makers who are willing to take action, and this is closely linked to our advocacy project. The next project is Disaster Resilience Community Information. Phase 1, we researched into community understanding of severe wind and tropical cyclone, and this was between the 2023 Derecho event and Tropical Cyclone Alfred. The next phase of the project is progressing alongside the Get Ready program review, with findings to be shared later this year on the Get Ready review. Aligning with the Get Ready program helps reduce duplication and makes better use of our resources. We've been developing targeted messaging on severe wind and tropical cyclones and incorporating those into the Get Ready Gold Coast campaign. Work has also begun on a technology-based community education initiative focused on severe wind and tropical cyclones, with the potential to add additional hazards in the future. The next one is the Tropical Cyclone Subplan, which provides guidance on preparedness, response and recovery arrangements specific to tropical cyclones forecast to impact the Gold Coast. The draft plan was tested during TC Alfred, reviewed, and the local disaster management group feedback was adopted, and the report was finalised in November last year. Updates will be made as required when contributing projects are completed, for example, designated places of refuge. The next project is city-owned critical infrastructure and places of refuge. The first work package is cost-benefit analysis, where we have engaged with an active project to undertake a cost estimate to compare construction cost for increased resilience. The cost-benefit analysis is included in the scope for the Ormeau Community Hub project so that we can compare construction costs for the different wind regions and for different importance levels, which relates to how many people use the building and how essential it is during a disaster. This will inform the City decision to adopt a proposed recommendation from James Cook Uni Cyclone Testing Station to adopt increased resilience as the minimum resilient design requirements for new city buildings. This project is on monitor status just as it's dependent on the Ormeau Community Hub project program, with the cost-benefit analysis currently being completed as part of the current concept design phase. The next work package is about targeted critical infrastructure, and we've been increasing our stakeholder engagement with this project with other projects in the city, including the Asset Excellence Program, Risk Management, Asset Condition and Performance Framework, the Climate Resilience and Sustainability Strategy team, and the Natural Hazards team. We're seeking for an agreed definition of critical infrastructure and aiming for citywide position to embed increased design resilience into future city buildings, with decisions guided by the cost-benefit analysis mentioned earlier. The next project or work package is place of refuge retrofits. So we shortlisted out of all city-owned buildings down to 6 for further assessment. We've undertaken over 24 assessments in terms of hydraulic impact, structural and flood-resilient road access. We now have 3 venues progressing to place of refuge retrofit concept designs, including Runaway Bay, Helensvale and Pimpamar. So Runaway Bay has completed structural concept design and we're going to procurement for the architectural design. Pimpamar has completed its first concept design workshop, and Helensvale procurement is nearing completion for engaging the design team. The next work package is the place of refuge design and construction, so any new builds. We've engaged with over 10 potential projects across the city regarding the suitability of the project to incorporate a place of refuge, with the primary considerations being flood-free or flood-resilient road access and the site being free from flooding. Some sites have therefore been not suitable and some projects have been pushed out or revised, but we do have one project currently in design, which is the Ormeau Community Hub, and currently in concept design with stakeholders' comments underway. And we will continue ongoing identification of other city-owned infrastructure projects that could incorporate a place of refuge. This project is on monitor, just again due to the dependency on infrastructure projects and their delivery timeframes. And the last work package in this project we presented in August as a new one after Cyclone Alfred, where we have looked at short-term options to enhance our evacuation centres for 3 critical infrastructure services, being backup power, backup communications and non-potable water for toilet flushing. So we assessed, completed a lot of assessments to narrow down to 5 key evac centres, as you can see on the map there. So in terms of communications, they've been complete. We've got additional Starlink internal and external access points to each venue. We've completed electrical designs for main switchboard upgrades. We've got generator specifications which will be procured through Fleet, who will own, maintain and deploy the generators as needed. And we've got procurement underway for the main switchboard upgrades. In terms of water, that is also proceeding to procurement, so this one is on track. The next project is a disaster resilient shelter needs, where we have assessed data for 10 vulnerable community groups and developed 5 heat maps showing where our vulnerable communities are across the city, We've commenced procurement phase now for the analysis of this data and to develop a strategy to guide future place of refuge locations, being mindful of city plan, future development and projected population growth. And the last project in the program is the severe wind strata study and industry engagement. Phase 1, we assessed 8 different strata buildings across the city, and we have got planning underway for Phase 2, which will incorporate learnings from Phase 1, as well as recommendations from Cyclone Alfred. We've prepared engagement material, including draft guidelines in relation to preparedness and shelter-in-place options. We've engaged with Phase 1 participants to seek feedback on the draft guidelines, and we're now underway with selecting 20 buildings to be representative of residential strata buildings based on the density and age data. And as you would have seen in your council update last week, we're seeking your support to engage these participants through expressions of interest to our team. In terms of next steps, we're going to continue our stakeholder engagement. We're going to progress with the 1,000 self-assessments for homeowners and for at least 4 workshops. We're going to progress the digital community education initiative, complete the concept designs for 3 places of refuge, continue to identify potential projects that can incorporate a place of refuge, complete the evacuation centre enhancement in terms of power and water, develop the shelter needs strategy, and undertake 20 strata building assessments. So in summary, in May 2024, Council endorsed Program AIR and approved the associated budget, establishing a clear mandate to enhance community preparedness and strengthen disaster resilience across the city. We now have 4 potential places of refuge identified and progressing through the design phases. We also have 5 existing evacuation centres that are being enhanced to improve functionality and service delivery during disaster events. So we've moved from site selection assessments and concept plans to detailed design, feasibility assessment and procurement for places of refuge and evacuation centres. All the projects in Program AIR increase the city's resilience and contribute towards an improved disaster resilience score for the Gold Coast. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sue. I had some questions just about the next stage. So today we've necessarily made the report non-confidential, and I appreciate there are elements of this next stage that necessarily need to be confidential because of probably the commercial arrangements or such things. But I wanted to know the 20 residential strata buildings that I think are noted in the bottom right-hand quadrant of your matrix there, and then the evacuation centres. I've always assumed that they are clearly not going to be council-owned buildings, and I wondered to what extent your team will be engaging with local councillors about the location of those buildings confidentially, so they can be informed about what those are meant to be and where they're meant to be.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Chair, once we get the reports, that would be absolutely something we can do, and they won't need to be confidential. It's not something that you would post out publicly, but they're not confidential reports, the actual assessments. And that's why we're really keen. There was a lot of concentration, I guess, around the coastal strip in the first 20, because they were the people that put up their hand. We're really keen to see if we can get some more in some of the suburbs around understanding that. And some of that vulnerability maps that you would have seen, some of that's just by exposure. For example, like there was that big red up into the hinterland.
Yes.
The report shows that the damage in the hinterland quite naturally will be a lot higher than down on the mainland because of the wind impact that will hit the range. So that is something we would definitely be engaging with local councillors on.
So is it fair to say that of the 3 places of refuge, the 5 evacuation centres and the 20 residential building assessments, to what extent are those locations council-owned facilities currently?
The 3 and 5 are council-owned, 20 are private-owned. Okay.
So at this stage, we haven't engaged for those places of refuge with large, shopping centre facilities, or not name any specifically, but yeah.
No, so that is on the plan for next financial year. We're going to start looking at state-owned as the first point to investigate, and then we'll look to privately owned beyond that.
So it's within the scope conceptually, but we haven't actually gone down that track just yet.
Correct.
Great, excellent. Any other questions? Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I just would need some assistance interpreting a couple of the heat maps. So the disaster resilience shelter needs slide, if you wouldn't mind bringing that one up.
Do you know what page you're on?
Oh, it's 45 of the agenda.
Cool.
It has a legend
Fourth
to the
last
top
slide.
right, which sort of has the colour indications, but then I see that South Stradbroke Island and even some of the unpopulated islands to the west are shaded red. I'm just trying to understand what that represents.
I assume, Councillor, without knowing that exact map, because there was a whole combination, and more than happy to take it on notice and come back, but that could be exposure. So given, as I said, the exposure on the southeast Queensland severe wind hazard assessment has it really quite intense up the north as to where it would likely to cross, then across the hinterland. So that particular one, but I am more than happy to come back with a full answer on that one.
Oh, no problem.
So the other thing that's feeding this is ABS data, census data, and also some of the current building standards. So mixed in to get that overall score of vulnerability, there's a whole bunch of inputs that are coming into that, but I'm more than happy to come back with that specific one. It's not something I understand we'd be looking as a growth corridor.
Very happy to take it on notice. The next slide as well, I was curious how the dots are represented, because again, where we do have development on South Stradbroke Island, that's not represented either with the dots. So I'm happy to take both those on notice just to better understand how the maps represent the ground. Thank you.
So just to clarify, Councillor Curtis is seeking some information about the impacts of those two maps on South Stradbroke Island specifically. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, thanks. Yep.
Awesome. That's
Through you,
great.
Chair, no problem.
Any other questions? Councillor Castro. Merrimack's got lots of dots.
Sorry?
Merrimack's got lots of dots here.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It only goes back to the very first slide, the severe wind advocacy, and it just said on hold, and I just wondered, it says on hold. There was no other explanation, so I just wondered why it was on hold.
In the severe wind advocacy one?
Through you, Chair, I guess, Councillor, it's ongoing discussion with the state government. So we are in regular communication with Reconstruction Authority, Department of Housing, who set the building codes. There is a long journey for us to do that. So we've got Bundaberg as the border around the building code. To bring that south has a huge amount of consequences as well around cost of build, cost of living, housing prices, etc., and so forth. So whilst I guess we should represent it as monitoring, because we're having ongoing discussions with the state, but at this stage there's no huge appetite at this stage from the state to move the wind region, for example, at this stage.
Does that answer your question? So
Yes,
the reason it's on hold is because our chief engagement agent is the state government, and they're not particularly supportive of moving the legislative framework that exists in Bundaberg further south. Have I read that correctly?
That's correct, and Chair, that's the basis of the advocacy. What it's allowing us to do is to get at some round tables with things like insurers and other ways. So if we don't move the building code down, how is it that we can incentivise, and that's part of then the link back to people understanding the resilience of their home, how is it we can incentivise? So we're actively in conversations with the Insurance Council as well.
Got it. Councillor Castro.
So I should say it's more monitoring rather than on hold. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Martin, question.
Thanks, Chair. I think you did mention it, but could just page 43, where we design and construct a place of refuge, where is that location again? Page 43?
So, yeah, the current one underway is Ormo Community Hub, which is incorporating the place of refuge.
So it would function as a day-to-day when it's not disaster. That's a new community facility that's being built.
Yeah, through you, Chair. That is an integrated facility, so it's going to have a library, community centre, council's office, etc. But in the event of a severe wind or cyclone, we do have the capability to be able to use it as a place of refuge.
Okay. And the other one was of the retrofit works package. I think there was 6 buildings assessed and 3 are proceeding. Are the other 3 in that 6? Are they future bodies of work, or were they kind of deemed not viable? And I was just interested in what those other 3 locations were. I think the retrofits were all very northern suburbs, so just wondering if there's others across the city.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So we undertook an assessment of all city-owned infrastructure that could potentially be a place of refuge, and we narrowed down that whole list through the assistance of James Cook Uni Cyclone Testing Station and their assessments, down to 6 that might be viable for further assessment. The 3 that weren't included to proceed to concept design were deemed to be not viable due to, not having flood-resilient road access, or the site may flood, or other key considerations, so they wouldn't be relevant to proceed. So I think the preference is, if we can ideally incorporate this into new builds, it's much easier to have all the design considerations undertaken throughout that process.
You still have the floor if you want it.
Yeah, but I was just conscious Mark put his light on there. I didn't know if you were going to add anything to that.
But just through you, Chair, you'll be aware from the last full council meeting, the acting mayor brought forward a mayoral minute around SES depots.
Yes.
I think that's where we're going to start heading this project in the direction of is multi-purpose buildings that we can build to importance level 3, and that can be a functional building for a purpose, and then be a place of refuge should a cyclone come. I think there was a vision at the start of Program Air that retrofit was going to be an easy thing to do, and then once we researched that, it wasn't going to be. So now it's more looking towards new builds is the best effective use of funds, and then looking at co-use community centres, SES depots, etc., and so forth.
Yep. And in the next 12 months, it's anticipated that engagement with the state government about their assets in the central and south might end up being part of this plan anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I think I spoke to last time, Chair, is the state and federal government are very keen to see cross-border investment at the moment as far as disaster resilience. So
cross-border, like to New South Wales, or
cross-state borders? Yeah, cross-state borders. So I think there's a real opportunity in the south to look as well and work towards a solution with Tweed Shire Council as well.
Okay.
We've had a very, very basic initial discussions about that, but I think there's certainly some favourable grant, application at the moment around cross-border application of disaster resilience.
Councillor Martin, it's still yours.
And so of those 6 that were retrofit, so essentially 3 now are not viable. So that essentially the end of retrofit. From here, they will all be new builds that you're talking about around dual use or more than dual use.
Yeah, through you, Chair, that's correct. In terms of city-owned buildings, we've exhausted pretty much all the options for retrofit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone feel inclined to move the item to note the presentation today? I'll move it. Councillor Wilkinson to second it. This body work's really important, and so you did great. Thanks for presenting today. It's excellent work. It's great to also get a picture of how this program will evolve moving forward, and I'm hoping that in the next 12 months we'll get an update. When is before I finish, this is obviously a progress update. Is it expected we'll have 12 monthly updates or 6 monthly updates on the program?
Based on the pace of the program, Chair, we were thinking annually, but if you prefer to see sooner, I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Great. All right. Did anyone want to speak against the motion? No. All those in favour? Motion is carried. There's no general business today. Did anyone want to bring general business? No one notified it? No. I'll call the meeting closed at 9:51. Thank you.